Okay. All right, everybody. Tim Lawler here, Dr. Tim Lawler here from Cardinal Medical Services. And I have an absolute rock star with us today, Mr. Adam Kemper from Florida. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. How are you today?
I'm doing great, sir. Thank you for coming on. So just for everybody knows, me and Adam, he's one of my absolute go-to resources, predominantly on the LinkedIn world, in regards to all things employment law. And we're going to dive into that really shortly here with him. But with my background in occupational medicine, I couldn't think of a better guest to have as the premier guest on this interview series I'm starting to launch than Adam. So without too much craziness and delay, let's just jump into your background, Adam, where you at in the world and what you do and all that kind of stuff.
Thanks, Tim, and appreciate you having me.
Yes,
So
sir.
I'm located in a place called Boca Raton, Florida. Most people know about this area just because maybe their grandparents come in here to retire. It was pretty well known as a retirement community, but that's beginning to change, and some
Okay.
younger families are coming in, and it's really a great place to raise our family. So I'm really enjoying it here. Originally from about an hour and a half south of Boca Raton, Miami, Florida, pretty well
Okay.
known throughout the country. And that's also where I went to law school at what is now known as a more well-known law school. It's the FIU College of Law. But when I was there in 2007 to 2010, it was a relatively new law school, and a lot of some pretty well-known attorneys have made it what it is today, along with the professors, which do a wonderful job of giving it the recognition that it deserves.
Very
So,
good.
in Boca Raton, I have a law firm that I opened up, coming up on 3 years now. It's
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It's the workplace law firm, and basically our area of expertise is company side labor and employment law with an eye towards proactive and preventative consulting and compliance so that business owners can stay in compliance with workplace laws and stay out of the courtroom. They can
I
avoid
think
being
that's a
sued and
yeah. God, that's a great that not to cut you off there. I think it's a great thing and service that you offer there because I think God it's so needed. And I think many businesses don't realize how bad they need it, and we're going to jump into that for sure. Um, so okay, so do you miss Miami if you're in Boca?
It's not that far away, so I still have my parents there, which is really the only reason I get down there. Occasionally, I'll go to a sporting event down there. But I really like Boca Raton. It's more my speed, and I know you're in San Diego,
Yes, sir.
so the speeds are a little different in San Diego versus like a place like Miami. I have family that used to live in San Diego too, so I'm familiar with it. I would say
Cool.
Boca Raton is more San Diego speed, if that makes sense.
Okay. It does. It does. I love it. So employment law. So you started your own law firm 3 years ago. So talk to me about that. How did you always know you wanted to do employment law, or did it kind of just fall into it? I know every lawyer's kind of story is different, how they get in their field of law, very similar to medicine, but how did you jump into employment law?
So I took a class, my second year of law school. It was an employment law class, and kind of like a funny story. I ended up taking that class because the professor who was teaching it gave me my lowest grade my first year of law school, and I was an athlete in high school, so I was always like this competitive nature in me to get back at her as if she did something wrong to me.
Yeah.
And it turns out that this was the first time that the material was kind of jumping off the page, and I was just
Okay.
like instantly light bulb went off, like, wow, this is something I'm really, really interested in. And I ended up doing very well in that class. I got what's called a book award.
Nice.
For law students, that just means it's the top grade in the class. And then I took an internship with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, also known as the EEOC,
Yeah.
which is sort of the epicenter for federal agency taking on employment discrimination claims. I did
Okay.
that during 2008 recession, lots of layoffs, lots of people filing for discrimination. So at a time when
Uh,
there was just like a flood of cases that came in, and the government needed all the help that they could get, so they brought on some law students. And to answer your question, it was just like one of those light bulb moments. I'm very grateful that I had it because I know a lot of people still haven't had that light bulb moment,
Yeah.
maybe 10, 15, 20 years into their career. And for me, it was in that second year employment law class that I just knew this is what I wanted to do, and this is all I've ever done.
That's awesome. Did you graduate law school and then go start your own firm right away, or did you work for somebody else at the bigger firm first?
So after finishing at the EEOC, I worked for a small claimant side employment law firm, meaning a firm that represented individuals who had lost their jobs and wanted to, let's say, sue their employer, maybe weren't paid properly by their employers. So I did that for 2.5 years, including
Okay.
parts in law school and then after law school. And then I transitioned to a big firm that was on the defense side. I did that for about 9 years,
Wow.
litigating workplace disputes and doing some commercial litigation. Spent a little bit of time at one other large firm
Yeah.
before about 3 years ago opening up my own firm. So I did spend quite a bit of time working for a large law firm. I became partner there, and then
Congratulations.
did a brief transition, and then decided to open up my own firm.
I think that's fantastic. So you kind of done both sides, right? Both defense and
Mhm.
plaintiffs, it seems like. I think that's,
Yes.
by no means I'm a lawyer, but having contacts with many attorneys throughout the nation, it seems like your story is kind of not a common one because I think some people start with some big law firms and they have their whole career there, which is fine. But I think it's good to get that experience, right? Kind of those reps under your belt, and then definitely go open your own practice. In the medicine world, it's kind of the same, but almost opposite. We're not going to go down this rabbit hole, but back in the day, a lot of doctors used to hang their own shingles, have their own practice. It's almost very, very rare right now. They're all being consolidated into the big healthcare systems as W-2 employees. But that's why I tip my hat to all the attorneys out there because, they're literally entrepreneurs, whether they want to or not, and they go do that. So I really tip my hat to you as well. That's one of the best things I want to get from this interview and podcast series is just to get people's stories because I think a lot of hearing people's stories gives people inspiration for anybody else listening out there, because it can be done and it can be done successfully. So pretty cool. I think that's an awesome jump into that background. I appreciate that. So talk to us about your ideal client, right? So who is Adam Kemper's ideal client that will come to him and say, hey, Mr. Kemper, I need your services. What does that look like?
So when I was at the big firm, the ideal client was business that either wanted to sue a lot or was sued a lot, because then that would generate billable hours. And
Sure.
at a large law firm setting, that is the metric that matters, is billable hours, business, generating revenue, and litigation is the best resource for that.
Makes sense.
Having seen all the pain that was experienced through litigation unnecessarily a lot of the time, and having learned what I've learned through coming on the claimant side and then shifting gears to the defense side, and also being at the EEOC, which is really neutral. So seeing
Yeah.
it from all angles, I felt that there was an area within the market that was not addressed as it should have been, which is this proactive, preventative side of things, which in medicine, there's definitely an area for that too. And I think you
Oh
take
yeah.
part in that, if I'm not mistaken, pretty heavily,
Yeah.
your practice.
Yes, I
Uh,
am.
so that's what I wanted to focus on with the workplace law firm is getting in with business owners who resonate with this concept of let's be proactive. Let's get things in compliance now. We don't want that lawsuit coming in. We don't want that audit coming in. We want to put processes in place now so that we can sleep better at night,
Yeah.
knowing that we're not going to be sued unnecessarily. Of course, things happen, but that's really what my aim is. And the clients that resonate with this proactive approach, they're the best clients for me. The small to mid-sized business owner, let's
Okay.
say,
Perfect.
that that is just like, you know what, Adam, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. We don't want to be sued. And oh, by the way, we want to do right by our employees too.
Right.
And by the way, it should be a given that employees work in a workplace that is legally compliant. That should be a given. But you
Agreed.
would be amazed how
I
many
believe it.
don't, that work in
Yeah.
these environments where employers don't have labor law posters, don't pay their employees the right way, fire employees inappropriately, and just take all sorts of actions, which ultimately lead to the lawsuit, which is very costly and most of the time avoidable.
I appreciate that. So would you say that people that do come find you, I just think of logically as a human being, knowing people, that a lot of people might have been burned in the past, maybe for the previous business, and they're like, okay, I need it the second time around. I need to do it right. You know what I'm saying? Or I guess my ultimate question is, I would imagine it's a small number of people that just come to you out of the gate trying to do it right, versus a lot of people have been burned in the past and now we're trying to do it right the second time around.
It's a combination. I would say that, yes, there are certainly some people that have been burned by the legal process. They see that it's not as like easygoing as maybe people think it is. It's a
Yeah.
lot, it's always double what you in price, what you think it's going to cost, and double the amount of
Yeah.
time, by the way, that you think it's going to be as well. It's just, it always works out that way. Like any lawyer that tells you it's going to be inexpensive or it's going to go by quickly, like get away from that lawyer because that's just not reality. The legal
Yeah.
system is very slow, it's very inefficient, and it's very expensive. So,
Mm,
the people that have been through that experience, they've experienced that pain, right? And
yeah.
and they have built within their mindset, how can I avoid that again?
Yeah.
And I'm a solution. The workplace law firm is a solution for that if it, let's say if it was a workplace matter. And then there are the people that, just maybe surround themselves. These are the people that surround themselves with other subject matter experts because they
Yeah.
are self-aware enough to know they don't know it all. Okay.
Gotcha.
So they bring in other subject matter experts in other areas. And let's say they start with me with something as simple as like a foundational employment agreement or an
Okay.
employee handbook. And then they begin to educate themselves through a very low barrier of entry with these things.
Yes.
And they begin to learn that, oh, okay, compliance is not so bad, now that we're beginning to talk to you and then you begin to plant seeds and then they begin to issue spot and knowing, then that can be the development of an ongoing relationship that starts with something as simple as an employment agreement, an employee handbook, or maybe a quick call. And then that opens their eyes to seeing, okay, this is something I can go to, or this is a resource I can go to on an ongoing basis. So
Love
it
it.
can come from
Love it.
two ways for sure.
Cool. So let me ask you this, Adam. So what are like top one, two, maybe even three things of like kind of hot water areas that you see on a daily basis, weekly basis, monthly basis? I'm sure there's a lot of commonality of the things that keep popping up. What are they?
I mean, number one, and it's like this far ahead of everything else, is
Yeah.
is wage and hour, just
Really
mistakes,
interesting.
misunderstandings, oversights, and I've said this before on other videos and other podcasts and on my LinkedIn posts. It's the wage and hour compliance is not supposed to be difficult. It's really supposed to
Yeah.
be easy. It's really just
Yeah.
pay people minimum wage, pay them overtime if they work it
Yes.
and keep timekeeping and pay records. That's it. It's
Yes.
just businesses, they just either for one reason or another fall into this world of exception. But those are the rules. And if you're
Yeah.
going to go to the realm of exceptions, you need to talk to someone like me first because those are the exceptions to the rule. Shouldn't you be starting with the rule?
Agreed.
So wage and hour is like the here and
Okay.
and then like a second area is something like a little more nuanced that is maybe a little bit more understandable for a business owner not to know about. Things like how to handle these quirky situations, maybe uh, new laws that come into effect in a place like
Sure.
California, you
Amazing amount. Yeah.
so many laws on the books. It's incredible. But just not being educated on all that it is required to legally employ somebody
Got
on
it.
a federal and state level. And that applies regardless of where you as the employer are. That applies where your employees are. So if you have employees that begin to enter into other states, you need to abide by those laws too. And a lot of employers just miss that. They don't understand that they have to also follow those laws.
Let's pause right there, Adam, real
Yep,
fast and talk
sure.
about that because I mean, in the world, especially post-COVID world, right? Everybody's virtual, right? So to your point, it's where the employee resides, not where
Correct.
the company is headquartered, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I see that a lot and that can be kind of tricky. We've had to do that in the past with some of our other companies of doing that as well. And actually our employee like literally switch states like every 6 months. So it's kind of a headache. So,
Hmm.
but to everybody out there listening, if you are a virtual company or digital company, please make sure you touch base with Adam and his team. If you're in Florida or even if you're not, okay, Adam, can people reach out to you even if they're not in Florida just to get guidance?
Yeah, they can reach out, and if it's not something that I can help them with, I always want to leave people with at least another resource for them so that they're just not left stranded.
Appreciate that.
So yeah, definitely reach out if they need help.
Okay.
But that's point number two, and then point number three is just in artful ways of terminating
Yes.
employees.
Yes.
And people always fall back on this, well, isn't it, employment at will? And they get confused with employment at will and right to work. And can I just fire for any reason? No, you cannot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
cannot fire for any reason. You need to identify, like, at will employment says you can fire for any reason, but there's like 150 exceptions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not knowing these exceptions and not knowing the pitfalls of terminating somebody, let's say close in time to something which would be characterized as a protected activity or protected action, then that can lead to like a retaliation or a potential wrongful
Sure.
termination type claim. So I would say wage and hours right up here,
Okay.
those quirky employment laws that come into effect on a state and federal level that you need to either do the research or hire an attorney to help you understand those laws. And number three is like inartful ways to terminate or inappropriate ways to fire people. I'll just put it that way.
Okay. Freaking love it. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole too much, but especially with physician salaries, right? Because clearly I don't know about there's, and again, this is state by state. I hold 3 state medical licenses, practicing in 2, so I know there's different worlds. But especially like in California, you try to do like the exemption status for physicians, and yes, sometimes they fall into that, and sometimes they don't. It's just a hotbed of, and just in general, I'd say salary employees. That's a whole probably hour or two we could talk about and how maybe maybe we'll do a follow up to this. I'd actually like to do that if you're willing, just to talk about some certain situations. This is kind of more for everybody listening, an introductory just to who Adam is and his background, which is so valuable. And we'll get to that at the end about how you can get a hold of Adam. But it's just these little things can get you guys. So if you are
Mhm.
in small business, no matter, what would you say? Like, even if no, it's just some kind of cost prohibitive, in some. If you're just like a 1 or 2 person shop, it's probably a little cost prohibitive, right? But what would you say? Like typically, like 3 to 5. I know there's not a specific number, but or maybe a certain amount of revenue that they should probably start really looking for an attorney like yourself.
Well, here's the thing, even, and I know this sounds crazy, but even when you employ one person, you are now an
Yeah,
employer.
yeah,
You go from being a business owner to an employer.
yes,
And with that comes responsibility. So I would say that employing one person, a lot can be accomplished through a consultation, maybe preparation of an employment agreement. And like that's all you might need, at
yeah,
that
yeah,
level. And then once you get to a larger size and potentially moving into other states, then, the cost goes up because you have more
sure,
of an operation to oversee and ensure that it's in compliance.
okay,
But yeah, I've worked with publicly traded companies, and I work with mom and pop shops, and everything in between.
love
So,
it.
uh, they it's obviously varying levels of what they all need, but I think if you're tuning into this and you're about to open a business, or let's say you have a business in place, don't think you're too small to
Okay.
that the government's not going to look at you or that you can't be sued, because there are laws that come into effect as soon as you have one employee.
Yes,
And a
sir.
lot of people don't know that, and then they get hit with something and they just say, "Well, I'm a mom and pop shop. Why do I have to deal with this?" And that's not really a defense that you're too small. For certain things it is, but for
Yeah.
certain things it's not.
Yes. Well, I appreciate that guidance for sure. So let's switch gears a little bit, Adam. Do you sounds like you did a lot of litigation previously, but do you currently do litigation, or do you collaborate with other firms that do that, or how does that work? If
I
something like goes
do. I,
extensively.
I look, if clients are working with me and
Yeah.
I'm their trusted advisor, and somehow BS, I don't want to curse, but
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
demand letter trickles in, or a lawsuit, and I always say all it takes is a filing fee and a pulse to file a lawsuit. If one of those trickles in to one of my clients that I know is doing the right thing, I will personally make sure that goes away. In
Awesome.
terms of defending the company or trying to get it resolved for like pennies on the dollar, that type of thing.
Sure.
If it's like this one-off scenario that it's not a business owner that I'm working with regularly, and perhaps they're out of compliance, I may take it or I may turn it down. I have to feel out the person. I have to
Sure.
feel out the business owner, and just get a good assessment on, is this worth my time and worth my resources to focus on this particular matter? And if it's not, I can potentially refer it out or partner with another firm to work on it together. But yeah, the
Perfect.
litigation is all I used to do, and
Awesome.
now I'm really trying to get it to 100% of this proactive preventative consulting, and I'm not that far away.
Congratulations. That's great. I think it's been really cool to watch. It just, I don't know, we've known each other about 6 months, 5 or 6 months now, and it's been kind of really just cool to watch you are one of like a few people I see kind of, for lack of a better term, and I can say this as an outsider to the legal industry. Obviously I work with a lot of attorneys, but I'm not an attorney. It's just still the two different worlds. But of just doing stuff, I call it outside the box. And I think it's pretty cool to see.
Thank you.
Again, just I put my entrepreneur hat on. And I think it's phenomenal, and it's cool not only to do the idea outside the box and then succeed with it, right? So I tip my hat to you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
In that world, Adam, do you do? Obviously, I come as an expert, a medical witness. Do you do a lot of other experts in your field? Or what kind of experts, if you do work with experts, what kind of experts do you work with?
So on the consulting side, if the client has a specific need and I just happen to be like a center of influence for that client, then I will refer them out to another subject matter expert. And it may not be the expert that you're referring to, but
Sure.
client needs something, they come to me, I'm going to make sure that they're taken care of. That's the type of customer service that I provide to my clients. In terms of the litigation like expert, or you
Yeah.
need like an expert witness.
Yes.
Uh, I used experts back, I don't want to say back in the day, but years ago
Yeah.
when I
Yeah.
did
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And the types of experts that we use, in the employment law cases that I handle, they're not that commonplace. If
Gotcha.
someone's suing an employer for unpaid minimum wage or unpaid overtime, you don't need an expert for that.
Makes sense.
If someone's suing for wrongful termination, and let's say they have a medical condition which is at issue, we may bring
Yes.
in an expert for that. If
Gotcha.
someone is claiming emotional distress, we may bring in a medical expert to evaluate the level of distress.
Got it.
If it's a executive compensation type claim, where it's a complex, it's not just like salary bonus, it's like, formula driven, and you may need an expert to identify, how similarly situated people might get paid had they not been let go. And,
Yes.
it's not a simple formula. You may bring in an expert for that. So those are really like the employment law type experts. I don't do the
Makes
workers'
sense.
comp side. I imagine that that's
Yeah.
experts are used a lot. Personal injury, I know they're used all the time. Medical
Yeah.
malpractice, they're used all the time. I know that's not something you ever want to hear about medical
No, it's
malpractice.
all good. No, yeah.
Um, and family law too. there's
Okay.
experts in family law.
Yeah.
But employment law, it would be limited, I would think, to those situations that I mentioned.
Okay. I didn't know, like perhaps like an expert, like an economist. Do you ever bring an economist for like paid, you know, lost pay analysis or stuff like that? I guess it could come into play, I'm sure.
Yeah, it could, and it, it needs to make sense in every case, because
Sure.
experts,
Yeah.
they're very good at what they do, but they're also very expensive.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
it needs to make sense. And, typically it might be triggered by the claimant side because the expert would be a supportive witness. And a
Sure.
lot of these claimants, they don't have the finances to pay for it because they may be out of work or underpaid. That was the whole point of them bringing the claim. So
Yes.
there's that financial aspect of it too. But they've been very helpful in, when we did need them. And the one piece of advice I would give to other attorneys out there that are watching this is to vet your expert and to
Yes.
get a nice word of mouth recommendation, because just because someone advertises themselves as an expert doesn't mean they actually are, and doesn't mean that they're going to withstand scrutiny if it comes down to trial. Because
Absolutely.
if your expert gets excluded and you paid all this money, then you wasted your time. But if you
Yeah.
know of experts that have been approved by the court process before and that have testified on the issue that you need them to testify for, there you go. So you do need to do some vetting of your
Yes.
expert before you choose one.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. And I'll just tell you, I'll go one step further. Obviously every expert's different, right? Oftentimes they should be giving you some type of free consultation, at least, just like most attorneys will, right? 15, 20, 30, maybe an hour of just listening to the case, right? I always kind of gets under my skin when I hear experts are like, nope, send a retainer, then I'll talk to you. It's like, well, how do you know it's going to work? Like, why are you going to take somebody's money without helping them out? It's pointless. It's kind of pointless to me. Doesn't make any sense. So they should
Hmm.
give you some kind of basic early kind of consultation for
Mm.
free or
Yeah.
minimal cost. So,
Hmm.
well, very good, Adam. I appreciate that, man. I know you a few more minutes here. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but just kind of in wrapping up, give us like, so you've launched your own firm. What's been like one or two big challenges you've encountered on your own journey of doing your firm?
Yeah, I'm sure you can resonate this as an entrepreneur, but I think small business, large business, any scenario where you're the entrepreneur, I think we have some commonalities among the challenges that we have.
Yes, sir.
At some points, feeling like, we have too much business, we don't have enough time to handle
Yes.
everything, like, just your hair's on fire, that type of thing. And then in other times, feeling the exact opposite and just constantly going back and forth with those two
Yes.
feelings. And I think that's very real. And I'm willing to own that, there have been many times in this 3-year journey where I'm just like, man, are we going to be able to afford to pay for the things that my family requires? And then
Yes.
there have been other times where it's just like, oh man, I could really use an associate right now, and should I go hire somebody because I'm really busy at the moment? And I think the key is just like staying even keel through the highs and the lows, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think that does take a certain personality, and that's why a lot of people never desire to be the entrepreneur because they never want to feel those things that I just described. But I do
Agreed.
think that those things are common among entrepreneurs because I have a lot of friends that are, and they've said the same types of things. And just feeling comfortable with doing some of the uncomfortable things that maybe you didn't have to do just being an employee,
Yes.
running your marketing, and you do a great job with your marketing, Tim.
Appreciate that.
Just outreach with people, um, doing billing, and I have people that help me, but you're still the CEO, so
It's
you're
yeah.
essentially in charge of everything, and you need to feel comfortable doing things outside of the practice of law, and some people just have no interest in that. I do. I always kind of had that entrepreneurial drive, so I'm enjoying it, and
Good.
I'm enjoying the highs and lows, and so far there's been way more highs than lows, so I'll just put it that way.
Congrats, man. So let's talk about this. What's been doesn't have to be maybe a specific case or what's or just a general type of win for you? What's a big win for Adam Kemper on a daily, monthly, or yearly basis? Would you say, or a big case that comes to your mind in which you're like, this we did some good here?
So I think in every lawyer's career, maybe the same can be said with every profession. Maybe you felt the same way. I think there's a turning point for all of us when we get out of this scary, I don't know if I can do this zone to I
Yes,
got this. You know what I
yes,
mean? And
yes,
and for me, that happened just before I became partner at that big firm, and I was working on a pretty big case. I was the lead attorney. We went to trial. We won. I did the opening. I don't know if I did the closing statement, but I did a lot of the work in the case to like bring it. The client was like thrilled.
yeah,
And like I just feel like for that time I was like, okay, I can do this.
yes,
And I think there's a lot of people out there with this imposter syndrome. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I
yes,
don't think it's bad to own like this is a little scary or that this is tough or maybe I'm not ready for this. But to do it anyway, to still like push yourself through that. And I
yes.
know for myself, I definitely did that. And now, just through having gone through those experiences, and I know I'm giving a general answer to a specific
No, I get it.
question, uh, now it just, you just feel so much more comfortable in your skin once you transition to what I was talking about before. And you just feel very comfortable, like being the go-to person, being the guy. And
Yes,
for me, it was after that trial and now being a business owner, and I tell this to other people that are thinking about doing this.
yes,
Every small victory is a big victory. If you
agreed.
land a new client, it's a big victory. It's great. You feel it a lot more versus bringing in a client for a business that doesn't, you have no skin in the game, like it doesn't belong
Yes,
to you. It just feels different. And so I celebrate those victories a lot more. And I need to remind
good,
myself of that because sometimes I get too caught up in it where I'm just like overlooking how important every single client is.
yes,
But I mean, I'm saying this now to kind of remind myself and maybe remind other people out there when you're in business for yourself, or let's say business for your family, or you have a business, celebrate those small victories because they that
agreed.
that'll they'll compound and they'll compile and it'll just make you feel like this just greater sense of gratitude for your decision on what you're doing with your life. So
Freaking love it.
so
I
yeah,
think that's a great answer, man. I could not agree more. I think it's often overlooked. I mean, the littlest things, again, maybe it's just something like, hey, you're getting calls from your marketing, right? It's like, hey, I did something right. It's just these little things that really people overlook. Maybe you're so stressed from just having to continue moving forward. You don't see that. But I think
hmm
it's so vital what you said is you have to stop, take a step back and like, okay, I'm doing this, and to just expound upon what you said about your big case is it's just a confidence booster, right? It's like, hey, I stepped into this unknown, super scary to do that, right? And it worked out okay. And then not even just been okay, it might have been I crushed it, knocked out the park. Then you feel really good. So then you
hmm
know that you're going to continue to step into more unknowns, but you've gone through the process. So now you can trust the process more, right? And that you know
hmm
that that's how it's going to hopefully end up on the other side, which it works out even better. So
yeah,
I think that's
exactly.
great, man. I'm imagine a lot of attorneys have that type of those types of feelings as well. Whether they work
Doctors
for
too, I'm sure.
and a lot of doctors. We're not going to go down this crazy rabbit hole. I have all these conversations to continue on these rabbit holes in future episodes here, Adam. Well, but there's a lot of burnout among attorneys too. By the way, a lot of burnout among physicians right now. I think that's sometimes lost. But that's why I love entrepreneurship. To your point, is that hey, you feel it viscerally on a daily basis more. Which I think that's why I love entrepreneurship. So I think
hmm
it's great. So congrats to you, man.
Thank you.
Well,
You too.
any I appreciate it, man. Any final thoughts here, Adam? Anything? Obviously, you want to share your information at the end so people know how to get a hold of you. But anything you want to share with the audience that you think could be beneficial? Maybe a younger Adam Kemper. Anything that you would give advice to change the way you've done so far? Talk to us.
So this kind of ties in the health to the law and I didn't personally struggle with this as much because I found my passion in my area of law, but I do see some of my colleagues which are unfortunately like unrecognizable through having
Yeah.
been at the same amount of time and practicing as I have, because they're clearly unhappy with their
Yes.
profession. They're clearly overworked, stressed, overweight, maybe unhealthy, that type of thing. And I'm not singling anybody out. That's not the point of this message.
Yeah.
But if I can pass one message to, let's say, law students or even med students, that are
Yes.
going through all the hard work right now to get to that next step, don't lose sight of your personal health.
Very
Continue
good.
to make that like priority number one, because all this other stuff, it doesn't matter if your health's not there. You know what I
Agreed.
mean? And you just made a good point before about just, physician burnout and attorney burnout. These are real things. And if
Yes,
you're
they
not
are.
passionate about what you're doing, it's going to feel even more like burnout. And then what are you going to start doing? You're going to start relying on crutches like
Yes.
drugs, alcohol, overeating, maybe
Yes.
gambling, whatever. And I've seen so many attorneys fall into that. And it's very sad. And like the piece of advice I would give is that even if you have to like quit practicing law, or let's say
Yeah.
quit being a physician, even though you went through this long, grueling process of getting there, your health is still number one.
Yes.
And just don't lose sight of that, because no one is going to come and save you.
Very
You
right.
have to control what you can control and make sure you continue to keep your health a priority, and everything else is gravy after that, in my opinion.
I could not agree more, man. I'm just gonna, especially I think, like, I think we're fairly similar, both in practicing a little while in our fields, and we
Mhm.
have that perspective. I think when you're first starting out, you're so tunnel visioned, you have to continue to go the next step, the next step, the next step.
Mhm.
Um, I wouldn't know if in today's age, maybe a little bit, the younger generation coming out is maybe a little more aware of this. I know
Mhm.
from the physician side they are. I'm not gonna say to a detriment, but just kind of to some quirkiness to where like they're almost paralyzed. Like I don't want to do anything because it could lead me down a bad road. It's like, well, you got to take the next step. You got to move forward. But I'm not gonna say the pendulum swung the whole way because I think the pendulum needs to swing more, because I just like you, you see this all the time, people having crutches, and
Mhm.
it's really sad. So
Mhm.
appreciate that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, Adam, thank you for your time, my friend. How do people get
Thank
a
you.
hold of you? Where can they find you and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so the way you found me is through LinkedIn. I try to be pretty active, and you're tremendous on LinkedIn as well. So LinkedIn,
Sure.
just do a search for my name, Adam Kemper, or you
Cool.
can go to my website, theworkplacelawfirm.com, and all my contact information will be there. And if anybody needs any help, feel free to reach out to either of us.
Very good. Well, Adam, thank you for your time. Everybody listening, feel free to subscribe to this. It's going to be mostly hosted on my YouTube channel. You can do this. And Adam, if you're open to it, I'd like to have you on for part two, maybe three, four, five. We'll see and dive into some things because I know we
Yeah.
could probably talk for weeks on a lot of the topics that we have. But I appreciate your time. And just for anybody listening to Adam's, Israel will love Adam. His content on his LinkedIn is absolutely top notch. I mean, I learn literally from every single one of his posts. Either if it's for me and my other businesses personally, or if it's just for general knowledge, because I love business in general. So just even for general knowledge, please go and follow Adam. And if you guys
Thank
are in
you.
Florida and need any guidance, please definitely connect with him there. So
Thank
we'll
you.
see you guys on the next one, and have a good day. Thanks, Adam, and we'll talk soon. Okay. Bye.
Thank you.